Hi, this is Ed Cohen, your broadcast host today in San Diego, California. This is Global TV, broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net. Well, the hot topic in the business world is business travel. Are we going to do it again? So we have a world-renowned expert in business travel and business travel management. He's an author, he's an advisor, he's a consultant to big business and to business travelers who want the right, authentic information. Let's welcome Scott Gillespie. Hello.
Ed, good to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You're coming to us today from outside of Cleveland, Ohio, right?
Yeah, nice weather here, and going to get out and play a little golf in a couple hours. So wish me luck.
Good for you. Good for you. Now, do they make you wear a mask when you're doing that?
No, but it's definitely expected to wear a mask when you're in the pro shop.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Also with us from Rio is Yana Ina. Hello. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. It's a pleasure.
Great. Now, Yana Ina is on the corporate side with a Dutch company called Brunel. Now, this is an energy-based company, isn't it?
Yes. 80% of our work is focused on the energy sector, renewables, oil and gas.
And so your job encompasses employee mobility of all kinds, business travel as well as immigration and relocation.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And is there much inbound relocations for your company now from Europe and the U.S.?
At this moment, basically all the companies, they kind of cancel all the relocations. So companies are bringing local employees to support during this time, but they already start to considering to bring back the expats. But I believe that until the end of the year, the things will be slowly, because here in Brazil, unfortunately, the numbers are still increasing. So I think we will need to wait a little bit more than the rest of the world to have the whole mobility back.
Yeah. Then what about business travel? Yana Ina, what about business travel? No, I think we've lost her. All right, let's move on. Eddie Marks, welcome.
Sorry, I had to unmute there.
Yeah, okay, unmute. Yeah.
Good to see you there, Ed.
Yeah, good to see you. So I want you to meet Scott Gillespie.
Hello, Scott.
Yeah.
Good to meet you.
So Eddie, tell us about your job and your function.
So I am a sales executive with New World Van Line, so I work in the household goods sector. And regarding global travel, it has been rather quiet these days. I understand from some of our New World's a part of the Harmony network, so I understand some of our European partners are very excited, starting to see the intra-European travel now. So.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, Scott, as we look at back to business travel, I'll tell you that I live about 5 minutes from a 5-minute drive to San Diego Airport in downtown here. And the number of planes coming in and taking off has increased over the past week significantly. You could see it. But it's still way slow. And what do you see happening outside of Cleveland and from your business corporate contacts?
Yeah, so the industry is slowly beginning to come back, which is good. When we say come back, we can measure that a few different ways. We can look at the airline schedules. There are more flights being scheduled and more flights being flown. So that's important. But the load factors, the percent of seats that are occupied on these planes, is still quite low in most cases. And that's actually a kind of a key question for a lot of the business travel community. Well, for travelers in general, is how comfortable are travelers going to be? How crowded or uncrowded does the plane have to be before people become, willing to fly? So that's probably the number one question, I think, right now.
So it's real interesting. As I was saying earlier, our last live meeting was February 27 in Washington, D.C. And from on the Southwest flight back from D.C. into San Diego, it was a big plane that probably seated 140. There are, if I remember right, it was less than half.
Mm.
And nobody was wearing a mask or anything, but they were certainly passing out the scotch and bourbon. So it was a painless flight. So let's welcome Rob Fletcher and welcome back Jana Ina. Rob, say hello. You're from London. Oh,
On mute. There you go. Hi. Yeah. Hello, everybody. How are you?
yeah, great. Well, thanks for coming on again.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Michael, say hello. Michael Cadden. Scott Gillespie in the corner, Michael Cadden. Yeah, yeah. Okay, welcome.
Hello, Ed.
All right, so you can hear me okay, Michael?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Michael's in Connecticut. He's managing director and partner with Living Abroad. So meet Scott Gillespie. And hello, Kathy. Welcome. You're on mute.
Hi, Ed.
Hi there. Welcome. This is Kathy Hine, partner, managing director with Michael in Living Abroad. We have with us Eddie Marks from New World Van Lines in Chicago and Rob Fletcher from Hart Relocation in London, and Jana Ina from Rio de Janeiro with Brunel. And Scott Gillespie and I are just now talking about our company's going to do business travel starting July 1 or even tomorrow. So what do you think? What are business leaders telling their key people to do now? Stop or go?
Be careful.
Yeah.
That's the number one directive. I think all senior leadership is very aware of the risks, in traveling. And so they're looking to the corporate travel managers to assure the senior management that good protocols are in place so that when business travelers raise their hand and say, I'm willing to travel, and I really feel that I have to travel, that the trip can be done successfully. And that really means, with travel suppliers, airlines, hotels, rental car, limos, Ubers, Airbnbs, et cetera, all of those have to be following good health and hygiene protocols. So that's a really important element in all corporate travel right now, is evaluating the extent to which those travel suppliers are improving their health and hygiene protocols. And then trying to understand what's required during the trip. You mentioned wearing a mask, and that's, the US airlines now are coming around to the position that that's going to be required on board. So travelers have a choice. They can either agree to that or not fly. But that's one of the elements that goes into thinking about taking more trips.
Scott, tell us about the air filtration systems on the planes. They're talking about it as being really cool, very clean, ozone related. Is that correct?
Yeah, those airlines have already had in place HEPA, which I couldn't tell you what it stands for right now with any accuracy, but it's highly effective at scrubbing out bacteria and virus particles in the air. It's industrial strength air quality filtration systems. They've had these in place, and I'm not sure that there's much that they're doing to improve those, because I'm not sure there's much that can be done to improve the filtration systems. But they're also taking very aggressive stances in terms of, I'll say, defumigating. The airlines probably wouldn't like that term, but that's really what they're doing. They're getting on board between every flight and spraying down all the seats, all the tray tables, all the armrests, pretty much every surface in the airline electrostatically in a way that is also really good at controlling, eliminating the viruses. And I just saw on a YouTube video yesterday, Boeing now has developed a prototype of a laboratory that once you leave and close the door, it flashes and soaks all the surfaces with a UV light further disinfect every visible surface in the bathroom. So you can tell the airlines are investing a lot of time and effort in making their flights much more hygienic.
Well, that is good news. You always wonder about the bathrooms, but, anyway, we'll change the subject here. So, so Yana, how many people do you have who, in a normal circumstance in Brunel, in Rio, how many people would ordinarily go on travel during the summer, normally?
That would really depend because we are always so that will depend on the requirements from our clients. So we will depending. Sometimes we will have like dozens and dozens, and yeah, it really depends because it's not only on us. We will depend on our clients' requirements. But here in Brazil at Brunel, we have like almost 40 executives that. They cancel all the business travels for 2020. All the travels were canceled for this year.
Crazy. So now, does this include going into Sao Paulo or Argentina also?
Sao Paulo, it's easy for us to go. It's not a problem. Of course, the flights, I think we are having like only 2 flights a day. But Argentina, actually not only Argentina, all the other countries are kind of not being really welcome with the idea of having flights from Brazil because, as I mentioned, our numbers are still increasing. So the borders, they're not really welcoming with the flights coming from here still.
Yeah, so here in Southern California, we get all the news, of course, out of Brazil, and it just seems to be like an alarming, threatening situation.
Yeah, unfortunately, the news are not good, and the reality either. Yeah, we need to do our part on staying at home, but it's really complicated because it's not just the pandemic thing; it's a political crisis at the same, and it's really complicated. Unfortunately, we don't have the any perspective to have the. We all at the beginning we really are all hoping that by this time we will all returning on our activities, and we don't have any provision because we have no idea how long this is going to take.
Yeah, okay. Kathy Hine, from your client's perspective, do you understand there's a lot of action about to begin? Do you think it's not?
Well, so we have some clients that are movers, and they are starting to see some domestic relocations happening. And also, I know Eddie mentioned he's part of the Harmony Network. So through the Harmony Network, we provide our destination information. They had several companies that were up for renewal in April. They asked us to extend that to June. And so far, half of those moving companies have renewed their subscription. And Paul, who runs the Harmony Network, believes that the other 3 companies that do use our information will come back on board. I think the moving companies are gearing up because traditionally our moving season is the summer. So I think we will see some moves. I work with Isaac's relocation. They're out of Boston. What he said is a lot of the workers he had to furlough. The problem is they're getting this extra money from the government, and they make more now than they do working for him. So right now, getting the workers is going, if the number of moves increases substantially, he might have a hard time finding staff for that position.
So Scott Gillespie, back to you and the friction idea. Remember those days when friction was a big deal?
Yes. So the general idea before this all started with the COVID, we were really paying a lot of attention to the wear and tear that frequent travelers, the road warriors, would accumulate over 6 months or a year or a couple of years of intense traveling. And the industry, the corporate travel management industry, was beginning to recognize that that was important because it affects retention and it affects productivity, and to some extent it affects the success you can have on your business trip. So that type of friction has gone way down because business travelers aren't traveling now. What has gone way up is their COVID anxiety, right? And management's anxiety about COVID-related risks. So if you think about those as costs, those costs of traveling have gone way up. And now they've basically made business trips unaffordable, or let's say unjustifiable. That's what we're facing now. Until this COVID anxiety cost comes down in people's minds, we're going to continue to see a real dampening of business travel because so few trips are going to pass the justification test at that high a cost barrier.
Yeah, Yana, Ina, do you agree to all that, right?
Yes, completely. I
Yeah.
completely agree.
Yeah, Michael Cadden, what say you?
About business travel?
Yeah,
Yeah, well, it is slow. I think international relocation long term will work because a lot of the countries are requiring quarantine for 14 days, but it would less affect relocation because they could go there and quarantine. But I think business travel is tight right now. But some of the countries are starting to loosen their borders, and that will be happening over the next 2 months. And there's different sites that have a lot of that information summarized, GBTA and others, on what's happening. Europe is starting to open up too. So, as those things come and there's no, have to quarantine for 2 weeks forms, then I see business travel picking up around, in those things, maybe in September,
yeah. So Rob Fletcher in London, you and I were just talking the other day, but this angle today is about business travel primarily. And what do you see? Are companies gearing up to send people out across the continent?
I think, as other speakers have said, I think, the quarantine thing is kind of the death knell of business travel right now, because, other than really essential travel for something very specific and you're prepared to invest the time, I think some countries are creating a very special kind of entrance program for people who are essential to be in, and they give them I think Australia have given them a 92-day or 92-hour visa for people to kind of come in and go out again. But it's going to be the kind of, nobody's going to want to go on a business trip. And I think, as Scott said, that COVID fear is the thing that's going to actually stop me wanting to go on a business trip. And I think, it's kind of interesting because COVID has had it's clearly a terrible disease and it's clearly had a devastating effect on the world. But, if you look at what we do in the world, we kill 1.75 million people every year in motor cars, and nobody fears getting in a motor car. Nobody goes, okay, I'm not sending you on a road trip in your car because there's a risk that you're going to die. But as a human race, we kill 1.75 million people every year. So I think people will kind of, there's an acceptance of risk. It just takes time for us to grow that acceptance of risk. And I think, what we see is people taking more care of themselves in terms of protection, hand sanitizer, masks. People will become a little more confident that they're in control of their own destiny. And then I think they will want to get back on the planes. I think it's then just in relation to whether the countries allow them. And I think, we've had a lot of conversation in Europe about air bridges where, one country who feels they're quite safe opens up a window to another country and allows that free travel between those two countries. Unfortunately, like UK and maybe Brazil right now aren't going to feature on anybody's air bridges, but I think you will start to see that. And I think once those air bridges open up, then I think you're going to see that pent-up demand for people to be in other places. send some real kind of positive moves into that space, and maybe airlines will start to fill those seats a little bit more than they are right now.
Yeah, Scott Gillespie, name us a couple, give us a couple of steps that company travel managers, C-level, can think about. What's
Sure.
your advice?
Yeah, I would definitely identify the company's most frequent travelers, the road warrior set. And really, for most companies, that might be 5 to 15% of all their business travelers. So it's not a big group, but that group accounts for about half of all the business travel done by a company, and certainly about half of all the spend on business travel for a company. So target that really small group because they're so concerned about this issue, right? Travel is really important to their job, and they're going to be the first to have the most valid concerns about traveling. So set that group up as the focus group and really help them understand everything that is available to them to help them be more comfortable and confident about traveling. You got to educate the travelers about what the travel suppliers are doing. You've got to make sure the travelers are feeling that the company has their back on health-related issues, that you're helping them understand the destination risks that they're going to, and the insurance, the health, medical care programs, the wellness programs that the company has in place to take care of them should they become, a victim of this or any other disease while they're traveling. So there's a lot of it is just about building confidence in the road warrior community that the companies are, have got their back and they're looking out for them.
Yeah.
I'd start there.
So what about taking better care of those key individuals who will go on travel, meaning upgrades, rather than Uber or a taxi, an executive car?
Sure, limos, and frankly, I think it's very easy to justify business class travel on the longer flights, and even on some shorter flights. Anything you can do to increase the social distancing is going to put the traveler's mind at ease, and that's really, really important. So there are some things that can be done that would cost a company a little bit more. Just like in a relocation exercise, you're going to pencil out what it's going to cost to move a family. But if you look at the big picture of making sure that traveler and or his family are willing to take the relocation trip, it's, and the extra cost on giving these people a premium service is small compared to the benefit of earning their
Right.
loyalty in effect.
So these people generate money, power, influence.
They're very important people to the company. Otherwise, you wouldn't be spending the money that the company will do to relocate someone. So they're very valuable employees, and we lose sight of that so often.
So what about hold harmless agreements? What do you think about? I know you're not a lawyer, but
yeah, I don't think we're probably, everyone on this call has probably been a very frequent traveler at some point or another in their careers, and it would not sit well, I doubt, with any of us. And so I don't think it's a practical path forward.
meaning that the company will assume duty of care and take care of everything.
The company is going to have to back their employees when they're traveling. The companies cannot expect travelers to go out into this now more risky travel environment with less protection than they had before. It's just not. I don't see that as being viable.
So, just as a sort of a comical, not really, but a comical aside right now, here in our condominium complex in Seaport Village, San Diego, the swimming pool is 84 degrees and beautiful and padlocked. And so there's a debate going on right now between key individuals, not necessarily me, but others, and the HOA, which is very expensive here, and also the board of directors, and the lawyers are fighting it out about who's going to need to sign a hold harmless before you step into that pool. So it's crazy. but it's real.
Yeah. So the little bit that I think holds here is the great difficulty that any injured party would have in proving where they contracted the source of the disease. So again, for a number of reasons, I think it's just not practical.
So the cost of business travel, well, first of all, let's assume that business travel is going to go on, but it'll be very, very executive or very, very pointed with an ROI attached before they go out the door. And Michael and I have discussed ROI before, and so I invite Michael Cadden to jump in here. But so it's going to cost a lot more for companies to send people on business travel, whether it's 4 days or 2 weeks. It's not a relo, it's a business travel, and will probably be frequent. Would you agree?
When you say frequent, what do you mean?
Well, let's just say I'm an executive with a corporation and making six figures and got an expense budget, blah, blah, blah. And my clients are in Brazil or in London, in Dubai, in Tel Aviv, or wherever, right? And so it's been months since I've been out seeing these people. Now here's an opportunity opening up between now and, say, Christmas. So when I go on those trips, I'm going to be expected to keep the accounts active, grow the accounts, and find somebody new. So all of that's going to get really expensive. So let's just say that I'm going to go around the world twice between now and Christmas. Expensive, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, it will be. I can't comment on this. From a lot of what I've seen in the industry statistics, the long haul travel will be the last to come back. So what we will see is you'll see a far more short haul trips emerge than you will the long haul trips. So travelers they will take shorter trips, less flight time, and fewer nights away.
Yeah.
That's where the bounce back will start, and it will take a long time, I believe, to recover the long haul travel volumes that we've seen in the past.
So what do you think? Will people who go on these business travel trips, will they stay in an apartment, or will they go into a Hilton?
I think that they will be much more confident of staying in a top brand name hotel chain.
Yeah.
The 4-star and 5-star properties. Those properties, those hotels are setting standards for travelers.
Trustworthiness.
Much easier to be sure that a Hilton, a Hyatt, a Marriott has your back, that they've set appropriate hygiene and health standards and they're adhering to them.
Yeah, I would think they'd be rigorous. Michael Cadden, what do you think?
Well, I'm not really sure. Just travel is going to be a little bit inconvenient with all the COVID responsibility separation. It'll be slower going. You'll have to go to airports maybe 2 hours or 3 hours, before a flight, so you're going following health regimes. As I said before, I think international relocations will start up because they're longer, before long-term business travel, before all this happened, a lot of long-term business trips were replacing relocation. But I think that's not going to come back for until next year anyways. So
okay, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. You're breaking up a little bit, the sound. Kathy, do you want to jump in on this? Kathy?
Just mute. There we go. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I think I agree with you. Somebody told me, and I don't know if this is true, they told me today that Airbnb people are still doing Airbnb. I don't know. I thought that they kind of came to a very, a slowdown. But I agree that the hotels, if it were me and I did frequent business travel, I would stay at a name brand hotel that I trusted, that I knew they wanted to protect their name, you know. I mean, I have some friends in Maine. I live in Connecticut, and I have some friends in Maine, and Maine is opening up for the summer season. The inns have now, I guess their governor has stated that you can stay at any of the inns there in Maine, but you must have a COVID test 72 hours before you come to stay at their inn. So smaller establishments are taking this extra step. And do people really want to go through that test? Well, I guess if they want to have, you know, a vacation to make everybody feel comfortable, the hotel staff, the other guests. So it's kind of all over the board. But for me, I agree with Scott. I would definitely pick an established, you know, brand name. I would feel
on business travel. Yes, Rob Fletcher.
Yeah, so I was listening to another group that were talking particularly about the hotels, and there's these kind of, you see it coming across. I've seen adverts for it, and people talk about the fogging machines, which kind of change the oxygen in a room to ozone, which kills all the bacteria. And a lot of the hotels apparently have bought a lot of fogging machines that they're going to use to absolutely kind of, you know, blitz clean those rooms. So, you know, down to bed linens and everything else, probably the cleanest room, you know, as long as you don't take the ultraviolet light with you, probably going to be the cleanest rooms you could stay in anywhere in the world. And I think that's going to be very different from if you're staying in an Airbnb where, you know, somebody's gone down with a dirty rag and a bit of bleach and wiped over a few surfaces and missed it. I'm not going to have the same level of confidence. And I would say, you know, just talking about the cost of travel, we had some flights that were cancelled as a result of the kind of the airlines, you know, and locking down everywhere. And one particularly, my mother-in-law, who kind of flies to and from her country to ours on a frequent basis. So I just rebooked her flight for July using the voucher that the airline gave me for the flight that got cancelled in April. And it's 50% cheaper. So I've got kind of a double voucher effectively because I haven't spent the whole voucher on this flight. I've got as much again to spend on the next flight. So, you know, I was surprised because I thought I'm going to be putting my hand in my pocket and paying more money because of the lack of travelers on the aircraft. But that's not, I think they're just keen to get people back in the air and bums on seats, really.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to Scott Gillespie. So what have you heard from GBTA, Global Business Travel Association? I'm sure you're in touch with some of those people.
Sure. They've done a poll of travel managers, and the travel managers report some degree of confidence that travel will, in fact, rebound. And while I appreciate that, the travel managers are not always the first to know. And what I did pay a fair amount of attention to was an article, I think this was in the Wall Street Journal within the last few days, anecdotal, you know, stories from some senior executives about their attitude toward their travel budgets. And alarmingly, many of them said that they were quite comfortable in reducing their travel budgets in lieu of the relatively good experience they've seen using Zoom and the other web sharing tools. So personally, I have a fair amount of concern that the business travel will be a long uphill climb back to normal, is what I'm gathering. I think some of the travel managers may not be as pessimistic as that. I hope they're right.
Well, I remember back after 2008 and 9, the financial crash and real estate crash, actually, that it was 2 or 3 years until things felt more normal, and even longer. You know, this past year, I personally have flown probably 100,000 miles. This in 18, 19, and you know, I don't remember doing that prior to 08. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and I can't remember things as much, but I just can't remember flying that much prior to 2008. So now looking ahead, with the number of business travelers going to be cut back, prices for the short term will probably stay, for coach, will probably stay pretty low. But for executives or the A-type people who go on business trips that we were just talking about, they're going to go business for sure.
I think that's very likely. Just kind of put some thoughts out on LinkedIn on this very issue, kind of a hypothetical. But I could understand if, and I'm not saying any of the airlines are thinking this way, but it occurs to me that an airline could choose to maximize the importance of social distancing in an effort to win back the business traveler. Surveys are showing that's a really important issue for business travelers, that and the general hygiene of the aircraft. I could see where an airline might say, look, all we need to do is sell 20% of our seats to the business travelers that are willing to pay very high fares for this very socially distant, flight. And they could break even. They can break even at a 20% load factor if the average airfare in the US anyway is, around $2,000 round trip. Don't know that an airline would adopt that strategy, but it speaks to your point, Ed, about there are a small number of business trips, a small percentage of business trips on which the traveler and their company would be willing to pay just about any price to get that person from A to B.
Okay, so what about like an Airbnb jet? Like for instance, private. Where was that story? Was that in the FT or was that in Wall Street Journal? I don't remember. But it was just the other day
private jets are definitely. I'm sure they're coming back. The cost per hour for a private jet, for a small private jet, is probably $3,000 to maybe $5,000 an hour. But it can seat 4 to 6 executives, and when you divide that cost out, that's pretty competitive, with commercial airfares. We've got a lot more convenience and a lot more confidence in the hygiene of that plane. Mm-hmm. So there is definitely a role for growing the private jet business. And there are already platforms that allow executives to kind of tag along on an existing flight that's been chartered. So sort of like Airbnb. Yes, those platforms do exist.
Fascinating. So Eddie Marks, are your trucks being filled? What are you doing?
It's been very interesting. So when we're talking about the business travelers, right, we have loads of them, probably 500 guys plus 600 people on the road on a daily basis right now. And because we're really conscious of the environment and our trucks run time, we actually put our staff in hotel rooms while they're away from home. And so far, we've had no challenges, no concerns. They're definitely practicing CDC measures while being on the road, and everybody has a heightened level of focus on cleanliness and so on. So that's been really good, and we've had no issues at all so far. We, as a company, David Marks, my uncle, who's the president of New World, released a statement last week where it's just based on individuals' safety and what their thresholds are, more or less. So if we're comfortable to go and see a client and the client's comfortable to see us, then we can go ahead and do so. Me personally right now, I don't really know how I feel about being in an airplane, and I've heard some horror stories online and about overcrowded planes and so on. I know Southwest really took some great measures by stating that they will not sell middle row seats throughout the remainder of the summer. And I think because of that, they're going to end up getting a fair amount of business. But I'm taking a trip to see some family on a personal trip soon, and I'm going to drive, and it's going to stink. But, it's what makes my family more comfortable. So that's what's valuable to me.
Yeah, fascinating. So Ina, in Rio, how do your friends and your family and your colleagues feel about all this? Are they going to the beach? Or are they going out eating and dancing, or staying in?
My family, everybody's in, but unfortunately, a lot of people in the city on the weekends. If you see on the news, you'll see the beaches are crowded. Some restaurants, they are not allowed to open, but they are open either way, and people are going. So yeah, it's complicated. But I'm with and my family. I have family in South Brazil, Curitiba, and I'm with Eddie. The plans that I have to visit them in a couple months. I'll be having the road. I will make a road trip because I don't feel comfortable on getting in the airplanes yet.
So you're saying that Copacabana Beach and LeBlanc are busy?
Yes, unfortunately, Ipanema, Copacabana, people are going to the beach. People are jogging in the street, and I really don't understand because it doesn't make any sense. The numbers are not something that you need to make a big research to get that type of information. So it's there. Everyone it's informed about it, but people are not. They are not afraid. They are being around, unfortunately.
I really appreciate you guys being on. So back to you, Scott Gillespie. Let's talk about step one, step two, step three. All of us have a lot. We have our own businesses, but we also have a lot of industry contacts and connections on a moment's notice. So how can we help you get the word out about your resourcefulness, your site, your info? Maybe we can all help you reach out to the corporate side a lot easier than that we could. So because of your longstanding corporate connections and your ability to provide senior level advice to business travel managers and organizations that focus on that product, how can we help you?
Gosh, well, first, thank you for the offer. I think the important thing here is to recognize that there are professionals like all of you in the relocation space, the HR, the mobility space. You have colleagues, and there are thousands of travel managers out there that are really well suited, well positioned, educated, and intent in helping corporate travelers travel safely. I would start with them. The reach out from anyone interested in understanding how to put travelers back on the road safely really should start with reaching out to the corporate travel manager and finding out just what their stance is on permitting travelers to get back on the road. I think that would be the best place to start rather than, I think that would be the most appropriate place to start with an outreach effort.
Right. So if you haven't been there already, go to Scott's LinkedIn page, Scott Gillespie. It's full of good information. And what's your website, Scott?
I've got the one that's might be most interesting to this group is Gillespie. Well, it's WordPress, Gillespie411.com. It's if you Google Gillespie Travel Innovation, you'll find it.
Great.
A lot of articles in terms of how the corporate travel industry needs to evolve.
Great. Yanaina, thanks so much for joining us. I wish you a good weekend and good health, really.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for the opportunity to share. And I will be staying safe here and wish you all a great weekend and stay safe.
Yeah, and to you. So, Eddie, thank you for joining us and for your insight about the transportation industry. Rob Fletcher, good to see you twice in 1 week. So that's great. And Kathy and Michael, living abroad, long-term friends and advisors, appreciate you for being on this show, this new conference. And
Thank you, man.
yeah, pleasure. So I want to just say a couple of things. You'll all get memos from me, maybe ad nauseum, but July 8th, we're doing a very special program, and Worldwide ERC is a prominent participant in it. Lynn Shotwell is speaking, and also the new head of government relations, Rebecca Stevens, is speaking about the new push to get Congress and federal agencies to recognize the importance of the relocation business, particularly as onshoring or reshoring, global supply chain manufacturing comes back into the U.S., and the need for the relocation industry to help companies and to get people resettled into mid-America or lower cost manufacturing areas in the new economy, the new now, as I call it. So we also have information during that July 8 meeting, which will be from 9 to 11 Pacific, which is 12 to 1 New York, and 1 to 2 in Rio. So it'll be a very interesting program. You'll all get information about it. And coming up this Monday coming up, June 22 at 4 p.m. Seattle time, I'm hosting a show with some people in Seattle having to do with trust the company as we go back to work. If you want me to go back to the office, is it clean? Is it safe? Are you trustworthy? So organizational development and organizational employee engagement and new rules and regulations. We're going to have a very interesting conversation about workforce resilience, communications, and employee engagement and employee experience, and how some companies in the Seattle area are getting back to business as normal, quote unquote, normal. Anyway, between now and Christmas, Global TV is going to be producing about 50 programs like this on various topics. And they're all going to be free of charge, no registration fees. We are supported by advertising, co-sponsors, underwriters, and more about that later. So this is me signing off from San Diego. Michael and Kathy, thank you from Living Abroad. Eddie Marks from New World. Rob Fletcher, Heart Relocation, that's wonderful. Wonderful name, you gotta have heart. And Scott Gillespie, you're a Wellspring. Please come back and give us more leadership when you think it's important.
Thank you for having me.
Great, okay. Thank you all, and goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks. Stay safe, everybody.